they lived in a heathenistic environment, and they were accustomed to many gods, and they were comfortable with many gods. And when it was Moses told them, let's serve God, let's do what he said, they said, okay, no problem, one more God, more benefits for us. So they weren't thinking in terms of a jealous one God, monotheism as opposed to poly. They weren't thinking in terms, they said, okay, we'll do whatever, because that was just one more. And they had many, so if you got 10, what's going to hurt to have 11? But God had news for him. He said, I'm jealous, I'm holy, I don't want any other God before me. And he gave them a list of 10 things. What were those 10 things he gave them?
The commandments.
The 10 commandments. These are the things I want you to follow. I'm not bringing you out so you can continue doing what you're doing. I want to separate you from this heathenistic nation because I want a people for me. I want you to serve me and devote your lives to me. So that was turning that bars didn't happen right away. And some of them didn't even make it because after that incident there with the earrings, and I just put them in there, and out came the calf, then that's when he was saying, you take them on, I'm not going to be with them anymore. And so many things have happened in this verse. So there was the moral code. The moral code encompassed the 10 commandments, what I want you to do, what I don't want you to do, who I want you to honor, who I don't want you to honor. The moral code. Then the spiritual code brought in who did God use as his ministers and leaders and preachers? What tribe did he pick out that he wanted to use for that?
Levites.
The Levitical tribe, the Levites. He wanted to use them. How many tribes were there? How many tribes of Israel were there? 12, sure were. And the Levites were one of them, and those are the ones that God chose that to be his priests. Okay, and do the priestly duties, and they were dealing with the ordinances and the foreshadowing of Christ and the rules of government. So all of that was going to take place. Now in Egypt, when they were in Egypt, they were crying, wanting to get out of Egypt. When the Lord took them out of Egypt, what were they doing? They were complaining. So does that sound familiar in any way? If we on the green grass, I don't want to be on the green grass. If we not on the green grass, I want to. It's like flesh makes you insatiable. You're never content. And God is telling us to be content. Whatever state you're in, be content. Start focusing on his word. And the more we focus on his word, the smaller our little petty complaint becomes, doesn't it? So not counting Revelation, Exodus has more miracles than any other book in the Bible. Isn't that amazing? So Exodus became Israel's Bill of Rights. That's when they started taking their independence. It became their Declaration of Independence. And it became their constitution because God was setting up a nation that would obey. He was setting up a nation that he had chosen to be his people. So all of this took place in Exodus. I had never really thought about it that way. We hear different things going on in Exodus, but when you start reading it, you realize a lot of activity went on in Exodus. And the greatest Old Testament miracle, which one would you think it would be? What was the greatest thing that happened?
In the Old Testament?
In Exodus. The greatest miracle in the Old Testament, in the books, they're saying one of the greatest was in Exodus.
The parting of the sea.
The Red Sea crossing, they call it. Yeah. The Red Sea crossing. What was that about, Miss Imani?
They wanted to go on the other side from the Pharaoh. God provided a way.
How did he provide? He let them go over the mountain in an elevator or what?
No, God told Moses to use his staff and put it in the water.
And what happened? Open up the sea. Now that was a great miracle, wasn't it? That was a great miracle. So that's saying the greatest Old Testament miracle occurs right there in Exodus, the Red Sea crossing. And that's not counting creation itself or the great flood. That's not counting those. What are some of the other things that happen in Exodus? Both the Passover and the Sabbath was observed in Exodus, for the first time in Exodus. So, and the Sabbath, setting up the Sabbath. So all of these things happen in Exodus. And if you get a visual, when you're building a pyramid, where do you start?
At the bottom.
From the bottom. So you can kind of see the building of God, where he's going and what he's trying to do with these people. He pulled them out of bondage. He pulled them out of a heathenistic environment. And he said, wash all of that stuff off. Leave all that. I don't want you to bring anything with you. And when we get saved and we've been in the world and we know the streets and we know the roads, what are some of the things we have to get rid of? We have to let that go, don't we? And it takes time, because you can tell people that of the world, they may do things, but, you keep working with them. This is what we do. This is what we don't do. This is what we say. So sometimes it's very interesting to see the transition of people that have not been exposed to what we've been exposed to all our life, church. So there is a transition there. So the heavenly manna was in Exodus. What was that? What was manna?
Angel food cake.
Angel food cake. They wanted something to eat, and God fed them. And then they complained. In Egypt, they cried. Out of Egypt, they complained. What was one of their complaints about the food? We want some meat. We want some meat. We sick of these wafers. We want some meat. And God rained down what? Quails. He gave them some meat. And then God said, don't try to save it overnight. Just take what you need for the day. Don't put nothing in your purse. And don't take it home for in the morning. Go to a smorgasbord. What are we going to do? Get a plate, because we're going to take some home. That's what we do. He said, but don't do that. And did everybody obey?
No.
No, they didn't. They didn't obey. So the food spoiled. It spoiled. And so God said, do it my way. Do how I want you to do it. And then what else happened in Exodus? One of the greatest construction projects. What was built in Exodus? What was built? He said, I want you to build me a tabernacle. All of these things happened in Exodus. So when you think about it, a lot went on in Exodus, didn't it? Yes, it did. So we're going over a review of Exodus, and we're going to finish up, and then we'll start with Leviticus afresh next week. So these are some of the things that have gone forth. The Red Sea crossing. What else did we name?
Passover.
The Passover.
Setting up of the Sabbath.
The setting up of the Sabbath.
Manna
from heaven.
The tabernacle.
Mm-hmm. All of these things happen in Exodus. All of these happen in Exodus. And God's codes, the moral code, his spiritual code, and his social code was set up right in Exodus. All of these things happen in Exodus. All right. So that's just the introduction. And he started off with 70, and they left out with millions. And the going to Egypt started off to be a good idea. It was a haven. Why did they go? People that just came in. Why did they go to Egypt in the first place? They didn't go there to be no slaves. It was a haven for them. To get food. It was a famine. They went there to get food, and things was going fine. And then one scripture say, there arose a king that knew not who. Knew not Joseph, and things began to change. When management changed, situation changed. I used to take a break. I used to go out and get lunch. New management now, and they micromanaging. Somebody say I micromanage too, but I just want it done the way I want it done. All right, so all of these things happen in Exodus. Now, that's just a brief overview of Exodus. The assignment today was to give us, pull out a point that stuck out in your mind. So, should I keep talking for a minute till you get your thoughts together, or who's ready to do that? In Exodus, right. This is the last Sunday we're going to focus on Exodus. We're going into Leviticus. But it was such a good, to me it was good.
Well, the one point that stood out in my mind throughout Exodus is how Moses went up that mountain.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of things stuck out, but it just takes me back to, God doesn't want lazy people.
No, he doesn't.
He wants people that's going to persevere. And as many times as Moses went up that mountain, and came back down and went back up, that lets you know that he was not a lazy person. God used him. And that just stuck out, You can't be lazy when it comes down to service.
The service of God.
If it means climbing a mountain, we don't even want to, I just think about the times when I didn't have a car. And I had to stand on the corner in the cold winter day waiting on the bus with 2 children to take to a babysitter. Now, I think about it, Lord, if I had to stand on the corner and wait for a bus, it would be, although I would, it would be devastating,
You're right.
Home, so that's the one thing that stuck out in my mind, him, going up to this mountain and coming back down.
Okay. Okay. And it showed obedience. He was a vessel that allowed himself to be used of God, because I'm not going back up there no more. I went up there, and he told me, because God called him, and he went. He was obedient. So and then he would come back down and tell them what God said, and they would, go through the scare motion and say, whatever you say, that what we do. And he'd have to go up again and say something else and come back down. So it showed obedience, perseverance, and being a vessel of God. Because what does it mean to be a vessel? Do I have input? No. Be available. That car sits out there, and it'll sit out there all year if I don't move it, because it's a vessel for my use. It's a vehicle to transport me. The lawnmower stay in the garage. It's an instrument to be used. And we have to think of ourselves as instruments of God to be used. I move when he give me instructions to move. Okay? All right, so the going up and down, the obedience, the perseverance, the following the leading of the Lord, that's a good point. And that's what we have to be. Anyone else want to point out anything out of Exodus that really stood out in your mind?
I don't want to take over all of it. The second thing that kind of really was hard for me to digest is that after all these years of how they could not believe, they saw this sea parting and them going through it, and then resistance coming after them and being destroyed. After Moses went back up that mountain again for those 40 days, and then they all kind of things. That's another thing that
kind of got you.
You see it and not believe. Is there
any comparison with today, with us? Are we believing his miracles, and then tomorrow is, oh God, what am I going to do? Everything kind of hit me in my face because it's so relevant to how we respond today. So I really couldn't be too, at first impression, how could they do that? And then, look in the mirror at yourself, Blanche. I bless you to get up every day. I keep you safe. I'm doing this for you. And then you worrying about this little minute thing over here. So it kind of helped build my faith that we just really have to trust God and be obedient. Because He will take care of us, won't He? So the first one was what? What was your first one? The up and down.
Oh, yeah.
The ascending and descending. And then the second one, the quick. Lapse of memory. Would you call it that? Memory, faith. Okay. Okay. Anyone else? What stood out in your mind?
I thought it impressed me this time around reading Exodus that he does not have to use humans to get his will done. In certain places he used the pillar of cloud, he used the fire by night and a pillar of cloud by day. At one point it said at the blast of his nostrils. When he parted the Red Sea, it says the east wind blew. That he can use the elements, whatever he wills. You know, it says that the mountains quaked and smoked when they went up to the mountain.
So he can use anything he wants. And then that gives me faith today because we like to put God in what? In a box. We love to be able to figure it out. I know what he's going to do. I know what Rose going to do. You know. So we love to put God in a box. And then this helps broaden your faith knowing that he can use anything he wants to get what he wants done. He's who? He's God. You know, I tell myself that at home a lot of times when the enemy's trying to come in and make things overwhelming. Oh, this is big. Oh, this is terrible. Then you think about it, but what is this against, then I say it out loud, God, you know? It kind of puts it in perspective, doesn't it? All right, so that's very good. He can use anything, anybody. Okay.
That takes me back to my favorite story, the donkey. Why you beat me 3 times?
Right. Can't you see? Somebody's ready to kill you. You use the donkey. Come on. Why won't you move? I'm trying to save your life. So God can use anything, anybody to accomplish what he wants done. Isn't that amazing? That's amazing.
And when he uses these elements, mankind can do nothing about it.
Right.
They could do nothing about the 12 plagues. They could do nothing about the water that walled up. And when Pharaoh and his army went in,
he couldn't do anything about it either. It can work for you, it can work against you. But we want to be on the Lord's side. Who's on the Lord's side? We better say, I'm on the Lord's side, and it makes me mighty glad. And that's where we better stay, you know, because when we're trying to work it out ourselves and trying to figure it out or putting our blueprint on the table, your blueprint shouldn't even be on the table. You shouldn't even what? Have a blueprint. Okay, but we got it in the drawer just in case I need it, you know. That you got to increase your faith, and burn your blueprint. I don't have one. God, help me. All right. Any other thoughts? Okay, and Exodus is also is known as the redemption book because God had written them off with the Jewry calf episode. He was going to build him a nation up, making Moses from Moses' seed. He said that. And then he forgave them. He renewed. Moses did what a second time? Had to go back up there again. He said, come on up. And God gave him the commandments again. Who wrote them? I mean, who inscribed them on the God himself? You know, he didn't have a stenographer. He didn't have Moses as his stenographer. He did it himself and brought them back down. So God So redemption, you're not written off. As long as there's life, there's hope. As long as you don't let the enemy so consume you until God does what? Turn you over. You don't ever want to get there, and the best way not to get there is stay close to God. Amen. Stay close to God. Don't get to the edge trying to determine how much can I do before they say I ain't saved. You don't want to be on nobody's edge, So redemption was manifested so clearly in Exodus also. In Exodus we covered the golden calf incident, and that comes up so often. So Exodus records the beginning of Israel's long march to where? Where were they going? Going to Canaan. It took God one night to do what? Get them out of Egypt. How long did it take to get Egypt out of them? One night to get them out. 40 years to get Egypt out of them, because that's what they knew. That's what they were accustomed to. So we don't want to keep being pruned and purged for the same thing, do we? One reason the pastor often say that David did a lot of things, but he didn't repeat stuff. So we don't want the same thing. The Lord still slapping us and pruning us for the same old thing, You took that final 10 times and you still didn't pass. You should be to memorize it by now,
Did he get Egypt out of them? I think. Is it possible that he got Egypt out of 2?
Egypt out of 2?
Joshua and Caleb.
Because that whole generation. Isn't that amazing? It took 40 years and still, look at the count, and they left with millions. Ooh, they say the righteous will what? Scarcely. Ooh, what a point. That door keep locking itself. Or it's never been unlocked. Yeah. Okay. We didn't know we locked out the preacher. All right. So that's a good point, isn't it? 40 years, and then everybody that was over 20 still didn't go. They didn't go. That whole generation, that consumed that 40 years, didn't it? All right, so let's answer some questions. What happened to the veil in the temple when Jesus was crucified? From top to bottom. What is that saying to us? What does that mean?
Torn down.
Torn down. Direct act.
You don't need a mediator as far as priest or whatever. You can go right in.
He said, come how? To the throne.
Bold.
Come boldly to the throne, because we know the ritual. We know they took it, the burnt offering in, and then took it to the front, and then the priests were doing their duty, and once a year one would go into the Holy of Holies. We don't have to do that anymore. We can go right to the Lord himself, right to the throne of grace. Who is the sin bearer in our stead? Jesus Christ and him crucified, isn't it? He suffered in our place for our punishment, for our sins. He took the punishment for our sins, didn't he? And Isaiah 53 and 5, what does that familiar one say? He was wounded for our transgression. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace is upon him, and with his stripes we are healed. So we didn't take the blunt of the punishment we should have got. What was the crude way before he was crucified? What was the crude way under that first covenant? The animals? The animals?
Yeah. And if they did sin, it wasn't like you can go and repent. If you broke that law, you said, what it was, you died.
A lot of things he said death, didn't he? But without the shedding of blood, there is no remission for sin. So the crude first covenant, there had to be a life for a life. And instead of taking your son, you would bring an animal as a sacrifice, and God would use that blood. And, you could ask the question, why it had to be so crude? Blood is a smelly blood, any exposure for any length of time, it doesn't have a pleasant smell, does it? So why did it have to be that way? Well, God wanted it that way, and he was emphasizing the vileness of sin, because God hates sin. Do this because your sins stink in my nostril. So, you don't want to be in that number. You don't want to be counted as vile and corrupt. As he said, go down there because your people have corrupted themselves. We want to please him. And Jesus came along, and he died once for all. Now we have a right to the tree of life, and we don't have to go through those rituals on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, and then annually he would go into the holies of holies with what? The incense in the censer, and the smoke from that were representing the people going up for God. Where was God's home here on earth? In the tabernacle. In the tabernacle. In the temple inside of the tabernacle. And why? Because he said what? I want to be with y'all.
But they were afraid of him.
What?
I'm trying to remember how you worded that. They were afraid.
When he manifested himself on the mountain, right, in the smoke and the thunder, they were afraid of him and said, Moses, you speak to God, you speak to God. But that was when he was on the mountain, but he wanted to be in the midst of his people, not on the mountain for a trick for Moses up and down. And then he said, build me a tabernacle, and I want to be among and dwell among you. So they built that tabernacle, and he told them how to do that, step by step by step. And he was he in the outer court?
No.
Was he in the holies?
No.
Where was he?
Holy
of holies. When you went in the holies of holies, you were in the presence of God, because that cloud would hover over that, and you would know that you were in the presence of God. But they couldn't go in there. Only the high priest could go in there. Okay, what were the three divisions of the tabernacle, which I just said?
Well, the outer court.
The outer court.
The holy and the holy.
The house. And then the holy and the most, right? Okay. So we've had a good, I didn't look to see how long we've been in Exodus, but isn't this kind of familiar now? Is it more familiar than it was before we started? Okay, so this is good. Who was left in charge of the congregation along with Aaron when Moses went into the mountain? No, Joshua went pieced away with Moses. He went pieced away because he stayed there and Moses went further. So when Moses came back down, remember with the plates, Joshua was there and Moses said, what is all that noise down there? And that's when he got upset, came down and saw what they were doing. So who
was in charge with Aaron?
Right.
When Moses went up to the mountain.
Right. Who helped hold up Moses' hand?
Start with an H.
Start with an H. It's only 3 letters.
Start with an H.
That's Exodus 24 and 14. 24 and 14. All right. Okay. You want some water? All right. Yes. We're going to get you some water. All right, another question. What awful proof did Israel give of their inability to keep God's law? showing that their hearts were really evil. What awful proof did they give? And we done said about a dozen times today.
About that manna that they had food.
No, what awful proof that just teed God off to the point.
The cat.
Oh,
The cat. That's the proof that shows that their inability to keep God's law. And that their hearts were really evil. You know how we can go through a form of godliness but denying the power therein. We can put on a good facade, a good show, go through the motion, but that one song said, whose side are you leaning on? I'm leaning on the Lord's side. And no matter what's happened, you have to really come to a decision in yourself. What's the word for it when you just made up your mind?
Resolve.
You have to come to a resolve. I'm going to live saved. I'm going to trust God. I don't care what happened.
Amen.
And they had not come to that resolve. They just thinking it's another God. And so they said, okay, he's gone. We don't know, how did they phrase that? We don't know what happened to that Moses. So that wasn't sincerity. That was not even concern. I don't know what happened to Mickey. Come on, I'm going to do something else. So it shows their inability when they did that.
And doesn't that prove that they were not with Moses anyway?
Say that again.
That really proved to me that they were never really with
Moses.
Maybe you have a congregation of people and they seem to be on your side and on your team until you're away, and then the ones who really weren't for you become the leadership.
Right.
For
division. Well, she wasn't really all of that. And that one time she did such and such to me. They start saying things.
Lends itself to prove what's really in you.
And then you got the one that ain't going nowhere, no way, where you say, well, I don't want to hear that.
Right.
Oh, well, because she's okay in my book. It's going to be some allegiance there, and it's going to be some dissension there. That's almost in anything, isn't it? It's going to be somebody going to talk about you, and it's going to be somebody, I ain't going to leave you for nothing. Yeah, she got a limp, but I don't care. Yeah, you can't tell when she's looking at you, but I don't care. Is somebody going to stick with you? And it's going to be somebody that's not going to stick with you. So, so that was the ultimate thing that showed that their inability to keep God's law. There wasn't true allegiance there. So we don't want to ever. So all these things hit me in my face, say, do I have a true allegiance? It brought questions to mind that made me answer that, yeah, I have true allegiance. Well, then I wouldn't do something like that, So these lessons just kept me awake and kept me going, and I'm grateful that it's not just a memorization session, but something to really prod and prune and get you in line to go to heaven, because that's where we headed, right?
Right. Is
this just a ritual we go through? Is this just something calisthenics we're going through?
God forbid.
God forbid. I want to go to heaven. Amen. I want to see His face in peace.
And let's just read that confirms the scripture in Revelation where the seed was scattered. Some was scattered on fertile ground, some was scattered on shallow ground. It lets you know that
different levels.
Where's your root? Where is your root? If this not rooted deeply in Jesus,
right?
When that wind blows,
something's going to happen.
It's going to shake you off.
That's right. You got to be rooted and grounded in Him. Otherwise, you're going to be uprooted by some form of fashion, some doctrine, some reason. Well, I did that because. It can't be any because when it comes to the Lord. His word said, be holy. Well, I'm halfway holy. He said, be holy. He didn't put a halfway in there. His word is settled. And it's no compromise and no changing, So these are the things that we have to be concerned about. All right. When was the tabernacle? The first part of the book, he's giving instructions. He's telling them all. Where did we do that? he's given instruction. But when was the tabernacle actually, from 25 to 31, he gave specifications. He just told them, this is what I want to do and this is what I want to happen. When was the tabernacle actually reared or put in place?
11 through 19. The chapters 11 through 19.
Building project started in 35. The building project started in 35. This was the construction. These are the instructions of him telling him about the specifications. So when you get to 35, it tells you that's when they really started building. When you get to 35 through 40, that's really when the building project started. All before then, it was just instructions and specifications and blueprints. When I got to the end of the chapter, I said, oh, now they starting to build. That was just telling them what to do. When he was going up there and coming down, going up there and telling down, he was just giving him instructions. This is how I want it. This is how I want it. And I love it that God is what? Redundant. He repeats himself. And he did a lot of repeating about this tabernacle long before the project even started. So, 40 and 17, what did it say? Forty and 17. We're just going back and forth.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. What does 40 and 17 say?
And it came to pass in the first month in the second year, on the first day of the month, that the tabernacle was reared up.
That's when it was actually finished and put in a usable position. You see? So all that talking we've been doing since 25 is just God telling them, this is the way I want it. This is the way I want it. Okay? So next question. In what way are our bodies compared to a tabernacle and a temple?
Know ye not that your body is a
Temple
temple
of
of the Holy Spirit?
Okay, so that tells us there.
Present your bodies a living sacrifice.
Okay, so that was 1 Corinthians 6 and 19, right? 1 Corinthians 6 and 19. Now, what was your other verse for the tabernacle?
Present your body.
Oh, well, my glasses never help.
The word with the word tabernacle in it.
Tabernacle.
We did temple. Know not that your body is a temple of the Holy Ghost. It's one scripture. What is it? Where is it found? About this earthly house.
You are.
For we
Spirit in this earthen vessel.
For we know that if our earthly house of this tabernacle be dissolved, we have another building. So your tabernacle should be decreasing, and your temple should be increasing and preparing itself for the Spirit of God, right? So I thought that was an interesting comparison. The one for be dissolved, 2 Corinthians 5 and 1. Okay. So he said, don't you know that your body is the temple of the Holy Ghost? And then for the tabernacle, for we know that this earthly house of this tabernacle be dissolved. We have another building, not made by hands. All right. We've got 5 minutes. Okay. Who first kindled the fire on the brazen altar? What do we know about that fire? What comes to mind when we do the fire?
It was supposed to be continual.
Continual. And who got in trouble, Duchess, about that fire?
Aaron's kids.
Aaron's kids, because they used what kind of fire?
They used
strange fire. Who started the fire in the first place? Which was, I said, Who set the fire in the first place?
The Lord himself.
The Lord himself. And I said, that's why he told them, take the fire from the brazen to take it up to the incense pot. That's where I want it from. I did this. I want you to do this there. They go get it from another source. It wasn't from the Lord. Isn't that amazing? That's amazing. And that's in Leviticus 9:24. God set the fire himself, and I want you to ignite the next altar from my fire. Isn't that something? God is amazing, isn't he? He's totally amazing. What punishment was inflicted on idolatrous Israel when they did this calf thing? What punishment was inflicted on them?
Break out. God left them, didn't
he? He left them, but he did something.
He said break out.
They didn't say break out. They use another word that starts with a P.
Plague.
A plague. They were plagued, and that's Exodus 32:35. And the Lord plagued the people. That's what it says, Exodus 32:35. And the Lord plagued the people because they made the calf, which Aaron made. It just came out on its own. That sounds like a 3-year-old excuse. I just put the jury in there, and it came out. That don't sound like, like a priest. Okay, this is one of my favorite. What wonderful manifestation was on Moses when he came down from the mountain? On his face and hair, I love that one. It says the skin of his face shone brightly, and that's Exodus 33:11. I love that. When I saw that one, I said, I'm going to ask this. They know this and they don't know that there. All right. Who was Moses' adopted mother? Pharaoh's daughter. Yeah, so all of these are good. So this is Exodus, and we see a lot went on in Exodus, and this is not everything. I could have gone on and on. It was about 100 different questions I could have pulled out of there, but I only pulled out 11 because I knew we wouldn't have time. But Exodus, there was a lot of things going on in Exodus, wasn't it? And so I thank God for allowing us to go through these 40 chapters. And I'm empowered. I'm feeling I'm on the right road now, and we're just going to keep on going, and we're going to go into Leviticus. And what are we going to be thinking about in Leviticus? The law. The law. All the things he gave us were part of the law, and this was just in pieces. Now he's devoted a whole book on the law. So that's where we're going to head. So we did Genesis, and we got out of Egypt. Now God is really trying to settle his people and say, okay, you live with me now. You have to learn the rules of my house. Somebody come live with you that wasn't living with you before. At first you kind of let them go a little bit, don't you?
Yeah.
A little bit. And then you buckle down and say, now the rules of this house is you in for 2 o'clock. The rules of this house is you don't put dishes in the sink and somebody else will wash. You kind of narrow down what you want. They come in, you kind of get a feel of them, how they act and what they know, what they don't know. So God in Leviticus, he's going to lay the law down. This is what he wants. So we're going to go into Leviticus with our hearts open to receive, and if we see anything that shouldn't be, we're going to do what? Ask the Lord to take it out.
Yes, Lord.
Take it out and strengthen me, because what? I want to be right. I want to be saved. Amen. We got to be holy.
Oh, yes.
And that's in Leviticus is where that verse is. Be ye what? Holy, because I'm holy. That's in Leviticus. So he's really laying down the law. I'm holy. You want to be like me? I want to reflect the image of Christ. I want to be like Jesus. Well, this is what you have to do. And all of that was under the law. All that was under the law. Okay, thank God for Sunday school.
Yeah.
Thank God for Leviticus. We going forward into Leviticus on another journey. Going to see Jesus. Isn't that where we going? We going to see Jesus. Because when he come and bleed and die and rise and be our propitiation and all of that, all of these rules that new covenant kicks in when he does. So right now we're learning the history of how God is bringing till we get to Jesus. All right? All right, I'm going to get a new board, and we're going to do Leviticus. This is the Exodus board. I got a Genesis board. So when Rose started missionary, she may say, Blanche, where are those boards you had? I know you had a lot of data in there. We're going to keep going. We're going to keep going. Yes, we are.